last Old Testament story was a really great story about that young man, that young boy actually, King Josiah. And he was an amazing king. He ruled for 31 years, and they were brilliant, brilliant years for the people of God. But can you believe it, children? After he died, every king that followed him was rubbish. They didn't listen to the prophets. They laughed at them. They didn't listen to any of God's laws, until eventually God got so frustrated. He was so angry that he allowed the king of Babylonia to invade Jerusalem and invade the people of Israel. Now, King Nebuchadnezzar, that was the king, was a very harsh man. And when he entered into Jerusalem, he took everything of value from the palace, from the temple, the gold ornaments, the beautiful things, the valuable things, and took them back to Babylon. But he didn't just do that. He killed every single person in Jerusalem. Man, woman, child, young, old, sick or healthy, it didn't matter. They were all killed. And then he destroyed everything. He set fire to the temple. He set fire to the palace. He broke the city walls. The only people to survive the massacre were the young Jewish princes from the royal household. They were about 16, 17-year-old teenage boys, and as long as they were healthy, handsome, and intelligent, they managed to be saved. They were taken into captivity and they were taken off to Babylon, where they were put into training. Now, they were in training for 3 years, but there were particularly 4 young men who our story over the next 2 weeks is about, because they decided when they were taken captive that no matter where they went or whatever they faced, they were going to honor God. They were going to be true to what God had asked them to do. So the first thing that they were faced with when they got to their training was that they were given food from the royal palace kitchen. Beautiful, sumptuous, delicious meals. And they were given wine to drink. Lots of fancy, expensive wine that they were given. Now they knew that God had strict rules on what they should eat and how that food should be prepared. And so they asked the king's official if they could, rather than have all that food and wine, if they could drink water and if they could eat fruit and vegetables. How many of you like fruit and vegetables? Well, the king's official really wasn't sure. He was very nervous of doing something that would get him in trouble with King Nebuchadnezzar. But he gave them a chance, and after 10 days, he went and he observed these young men. And he found that they looked just as healthy and just as strong as any of the other people who'd gone into captivity. And then after 3 years, that was their training, all the young men were presented to the king. And the Bible tells us that the king found no one who impressed him more than these 4 young princes who had decided to make a stand for God. He had given them superior wisdom and knowledge far above any of the others, because they had chosen to honor him. So now, over time, these men, Daniel and his friends Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, were given positions of authority in the Babylonian kingdom. And then King Nebuchadnezzar decided that he wanted to make a statue that was enormous. It was 30 meters high, and it was covered in gold. And he called all the people from the province, all the rulers from the provinces that he ruled over. And he said, when you hear the sound of music, when the trumpets blare, every single one of you need to bow to your knees in worship of this golden statue. Now, Daniel's friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, were there, and they knew that this really was something that God did not want them to do. And so when they heard the music blaring, they didn't drop to their knees. Well, there were people who didn't like these Jewish princes. They didn't like these captives who'd come in and started to rule over them. And so they rushed off with great excitement to report them to the king. Well, he was furious when he heard that there were people who wouldn't bow down and do what he'd said. And so he called them to him and he said, you will bow down and you will worship that statue or you will die. Well, these 3 young men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they said to him, We will not bow down and worship your gods or bow down and worship your golden image. Our God is able to save us, but even if he doesn't, we will not do it. Well, King Nebuchadnezzar was mad with rage. He ordered the fire where they were going to be thrown in to be heated up seven times hotter than normal. And when they were thrown into this fire, the soldiers who threw them in turned to race away from the terrible heat of the flames, but they died before they could get away. And then King Nebuchadnezzar couldn't believe it. He jumped to his feet. He called everyone to come and look. He said, didn't we throw 3 men into the fire? They were bound, they were tied up, but I can see 4. And they're dancing and they're walking around in there. And he called them out. And he fell to his knees because he could not believe that these men, they didn't have a single hair on their head singed. They didn't even smell of smoke. And he said, your God has rescued you. And he made an order that no one was to make fun of the God of the Jews. That everybody was free to worship that God as well, which was amazing news for Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They were free now. They were given positions of even more power, but that's not what interested them. What they were so pleased about was that they were now free to worship the Lord God of Israel. Isn't that an amazing story, guys? And our challenge is obvious, but it's really not very easy. Will you, will I, will we make a stand and do what God asks us to do, no matter what the cost? Will we do what we know is right, even when everybody around us does something different? You know, these young men chose to eat vegetables. Sometimes vegetables don't even smell nice, do they? They chose to eat vegetables and drink water rather than the luxurious food in the palace. I'm sure the teenage boys were tempted to have a glass of wine, but they made a stand to do the right thing. I'm really sure that they were terrified at the thought of being burnt alive. I would have been. How horrific. But you know what? They decided that that is what they were going to do. And so before God, they asked for help, and he came to their rescue. So my challenge today is to really decide who you will serve. And also, as you look at your friends, are some of your friends, or are you looking at things you shouldn't look at? Are you doing things that you know are wrong? I really want you to be the kids who influence others, who aren't influenced to do wrong, but rather you influence your friends to do the right thing. And I haven't really got a craft for you. There's a picture that we've posted on the group. You can color this in. There's a few puppet things you can make. But I really would love you to, at some point with your parents, this weekend or in the holidays, to make a campfire. And as you feel the warmth of those flames, think about what it was like for these young men to face death, to face a fire that would burn them, and to still do the right thing. Talk to your parents about how hard that is. Wherever you are, in your classroom, on the sports field, whatever the challenges are. Act out this story. It's an amazing story. Act it out and talk about it. And then pray that God will help you to be brave and to stand for him, whatever the cost. All right, guys, have a great week. God bless.